Welcome to SmokeHouseStudios.net. The in-studio broadcast feed is now live.
Warning. This show is about the return of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you are easily offended by the truth, then you need to keep listening. His return is drawing near.
SmokeHouseStudios.net. The Front Porch Show. A unique blend of current events and what they might mean. Humbly seen through the eyes of God's Word, the Bible, in an old-school front porch discussion with occasional guests, your input, and a guiding hand through Christ. Broadcasting from atop the front porch, it's SmokeHouseStudios.net's The Front Porch Show. Now, carefully blending more smoke goodness in each and every soundbite, your host, Smokehouse.
Hey, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, friends, wherever you may be across the globe. Smokehouse here, SmokeHouseStudios.net Front Porch Show. Out here on this Saturday night, November the 14th, 2020, coming to you live out of Nashville, Tennessee. Let me share with you what we have on tap tonight. We have got all of the election fraud information coming from all different angles. Sidney Powell, if you know who she is, she's General Flynn's attorney. She has been all over this, working with Rudy Giuliani and many others to uncover all the election fraud. And we're going to get right into tonight's show. But first, let's hear from Sidney Powell. She was on last night with Lou Dobbs. Here we go.
Sidney, at the outset of this broadcast, I said that this is the culmination of what has been over a 4-year effort to overthrow this president, to first deny his candidacy, the election, but then to overthrow his presidency. This looks like the effort to carry out an end game in the effort against him. Do you concur?
Oh, absolutely, and it's been organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, the big tech companies, the social media companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to release the Kraken.
She's going to release the Kraken. So what exactly is a Kraken? Well, the Kraken is a legendary cephalopod-like sea monster of gigantic size in Scandinavian folklore. And according to the Norse sagas, the Kraken dwells off the coast of Norway and Greenland, and it terrorizes nearby sailors. Basically, the sheer size and fearsome appearance attributed to the Kraken have made it a common ocean-dwelling monster in various fictional works. So, although the Kraken is a fictional character, nonetheless, basically what Sidney Powell said was that she's going to release the dogs. So we're going to have to wait and see, folks. I mean, this election still is not over. It does look like Pennsylvania is going to Trump. They're still recounting. Now, I know CNN is calling Georgia for Biden right now, but nothing has been credited. Okay? Let me repeat that. Nothing has been credited. Nothing has been certified. These states have not certified their votes yet. We still do not have a president. Yet Biden is acting as though he's the incoming president with nothing certified yet. Apparently, from what I have just gathered, he's meeting with foreign leaders. That's going against the Logan Act, just more charges to bring against him. So, what is going to happen? You know, all through this, we've been talking about judgment coming. And tonight, we're going to kind of look to a positive side here, because it does look like everyone involved is now overturning evidence that this was massive voter fraud. They're getting the proof, and we're going to go into Jeremiah 33 tonight. I wanted to title the show Release the Kraken, but I didn't want it to get deleted. So tonight we titled the show Justice or Judgment? Justice or Judgment? In Jeremiah chapter 9, it says, thank God and have courage. And what we're going to look at tonight is Jeremiah says, or the Word of God says through Jeremiah, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him glory in this, that he knoweth me. So if we look at the might of America, it's really not her millions, but it's the quality of her men and women. The power of democracy is our trust. And without it, the future would be dark indeed. And we have the facilities for giving everyone the good life. And let us thank God and have good courage. Let not the wise glory in their wisdom. See, our cities need a revival of civic virtue here. We should be ashamed of our tragic record of inefficiency and corruption in business and in government. Right now, as we speak today, there is a massive Trump rally that has been going on in D.C. all day. Not one single fire has been set. No one is rioting, tearing up anything. They are praising God, crying out to God. And hopefully they're opening the heavenly portals to bring God's judgment. Here is a group of Trump supporters that were doing nothing but just standing around singing hymns today. It was a beautiful thing. So the Trump supporters are crying out to God. Let not the mighty nation glory in its might. Instead, we must rise up in the power of God to establish the life of this land on righteousness, which alone can exalt a nation. Today, the United States is a rich nation composed of many poor folks. Let not the rich nation glory in its. See, God delights in righteousness. Let us have courage to emphasize our constant need for Christian character. And through the Spirit of God, the world may have new life. God at work in our lives will build a world of loving kindness and of righteousness. Okay, so folks, as we're going through this rough time in our existence as a nation right now, we have Washington, D.C. completely bombarded by Trump supporters, peacefully protesting, loving one another, and as we just shared, the group that was crying out and singing hymns to God. So as we get into the information we're going to share later on in the program, you'll understand why tonight we're going to look at Jeremiah 33, which is the prophecy concerning the Davidic kingdom. Now, if we go back, and if you've been listening to people like Sid Roth, a lot of these people have been basically Pat Robinson, been saying that Trump's going to have a second term, and they're saying it boldly with assurance. If you go back and listen to Kim Clement back in 2015 is talking about God raising up his modern-day David. And so with everything being uncovered now, everything done in the darkness shown in the light this week, let's just take a look at the Davidic kingdom here in Jeremiah 33. And it says, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah the second time while he was yet shut up in the court of the prison, saying. So here we have David now. He's in the courts. He's in prison, kind of like this administration is right now. Everything is tied up in court, and they're in prison. And the Lord says in verse 2, thus saith the Lord, the maker thereof, the Lord that formed it to establish it, the Lord is his name. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not. So think about this for a minute. God speaks to Jeremiah, reminding the prophet of his true character as creator and sustainer of all, and Jeremiah to the ongoing relationship with him. So God was just reminding him these things. Call upon me, and I will show you great and mighty things. Are we about to see some great and mighty things transpire? That's the question. Let's move down to verse 6. Verse 6, it says, Behold, I will bring it health and cure, and I will cure them, and will reveal unto them the abundance of peace and truth. And I will cause the captivity of Judah and the captivity of Israel to return, and will build them as at the first. And I will cleanse them from all of their iniquity, whereby they have sinned against me, and I will pardon all of their iniquities, whereby they have sinned, and whereby they have transgressed against me. And it shall be to me a name of joy, praise, and honor before all nations of the earth, which shall hear all of the good that I do unto them, and they shall fear and tremble for all goodness and for the prosperity that I procure unto it. And thus saith the Lord again, There shall be heard in this place which ye shall be desolate without man and without beast, even in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. They are desolate, without man and without inhabitant and without beast. The voice of joy, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, the voice of them that shall say, Praise the Lord of hosts, for the Lord is good. And thus saith the Lord of hosts again in this place, which is desolate, without man, without beast, and all the cities thereof, shall be a habitation of shepherds, causing their flocks to lie down. Now, here, if we take a look, we're going to see that God lets Jeremiah know that he is aware of the destruction that is happening to the people of Judah. So is God telling us now that he is aware of the destruction that's happening to the people here in America? Interesting concept here. And if they reflect back on the pain and the invitation of war, God here reiterates that he allowed the Babylonian invasion to happen as a way of cleansing Judah of its wickedness. Okay? So, could God have allowed all of this captivity that we have been finding ourselves in, all these number of years, to bring us to a place to where we know now, especially if we look at this election, there is no hope. There is none. Because it's either going to be patriotism and freedom, or it's going to be isolation, socialism, communism, captivity, and death. I mean, this is what we're staring down the loaded barrel of right now. And a lot of people, this has been known as the Great Awakening. So could this be what that actually is, the Great Awakening? The fact that we have now been shown, or at least in the election, we're going to be shown all the fraudulent activity that has been happening for years, where we have been deceived by thinking we actually did have a choice, when we never did have a choice. They had their candidates that they wanted, whether it be Democrat or Republican, running against each other, both of which were going to do what the deep state wanting them to do. But yet we have this election, and one side promises one thing while another side promises another. And we think we have a choice. We think we go to the polls to pick the best one, when actually it doesn't matter which one we pick. So when their official gets elected, they just kind of dish out to us just enough to keep us a little bit pacified. I mean, we have to work like a dog just to pay the bills and survive, and they give us just a little bit above that to have a little bit of entertainment, so that we'll just keep coming back for more and thinking it's going to get better. and better with the next candidate. So the question here is, are we seeing this? I'm asking you here. Are we seeing this? So if we look a little further, these verses, they comprise another message of hope in the future. See, God's going to restore both his people and their city, Jerusalem, and God specifically is about restoration, and it matches his specificity of destruction. Let's look at 13 and 14 here. In the cities of the mountains, in the cities of the vale, and in the cities of the south, and in the land of Benjamin, and in the places about Jerusalem, and in the cities of Judah, shall the flocks pass again under the hands of him that telleth him, saith the Lord. Behold, well, we'll say that for the next one. But here what we have is God again reiterates that he will restore both Israel and Judah during the restoration, and he will choose a particularly familiar line, which is the branch of David, from which the Messiah will emerge to bring justice and righteousness to the earth. So are we seeing the coming Messiah? Are we seeing righteousness and justice about to be deployed? Only time is going to tell, but here, for many, 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 many shows, all I have covered is judgment coming, judgment coming, judgment coming. Okay? So what we're going to have to do now is look at this side of it. So behold, the day comes, saith the Lord, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. And in those days, at that time, I will cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. Now, I know God's talking about Israel here, but we're looking at parallels. Could this be righteousness and judgment that is about to, befall this nation? Not that we're going to be going into a paradise. I'm just saying, is justice and judgment coming against the wicked? Or is it coming against all of us? We're going to have to read on. And verse 16 says, in those days shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely, and this is the name wherewith she shall cry, or she shall be called the Lord our righteousness. For thus saith the Lord, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. Neither shall the priests, the Levites, want a man before me to offer burnt offerings and to kindle meat offerings and to do sacrifice continually. And the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season. So God emphasizes his point in the same way that he does all the time by unrealistic if-then type of statements. And since God is the creator and the sustainer of all creation and will be for all eternity, the promises he makes with his people are also eternal. And we have to understand here, folks, what we have got to understand is something big is happening. Something very big and powerful is happening. Now, I don't know what it's going to be. Again, Jerry Clower, he tells that story where he set that chicken brooder on fire because it had all these rats in it. And he had poured gas down in that chicken brooder and set it afire to kill all the rats, and the rats took off running out from under the chicken brooder, and he said there was about 400 balls of fire running all over the place, one of which was headed to a barn that had about 500 bales of hay, and he said that was the first time in his life that he didn't know where he would be when he got where he was going. And, this is kind of the way that we are. If they're able to pull this off and Biden gets it, we're going to go over tonight that the Democrats, they're already starting a list with all the Republican Trump supporters on it, and they're going to come after us. Marcia Blackburn even responded to Ocasio-Cortez about this list. We're going to cover all of that. So we're being shown what's going to happen if they're able to pull this off. They're coming after us. You know, it's interesting that the software that is in these voting machines is called Dominion. And as we have been finding more evidence, this Dominion software has not only been used in America, but it's been used in Venezuela. It's being used in Germany. This Dominion software has been used to corrupt and steal elections globally. Globally. And what does Satan want to do? He wants to take dominion of the earth. The Word of God tells us this. So it is not hard at all to understand who is in charge of this software, who are in charge of these elections, who is in charge of the deep state. That is Satan himself, or Satan's minions anyway. And they worship and serve their master Satan. This is what abortion has been all about. This is the sacrifice to Baal, the demonic sacrifice to gain these demonic powers. And it's rinse, lather, and repeat. This has been going on since the beginning of time here. So has God had enough? Has the stench of this sin risen to the nostrils of God? They're losing their narrative here, folks. They're all of this information that Twitter, Facebook, all of these social media platforms are deleting and censoring about all this election fraud. The news media is not even covering it because all they're doing is saying, what's Biden? They're saying he's up now to 300 and something electoral votes. Come on, man. Joe Biden of all people. Oh, let's just not forget this. Got to play it again.
I can tell you this. Excuse my language, but think about it. Barack and I think it's a right for people to have bad health care. For people to have bad health care.
For people to have bad care. Now, how in the world could somebody like that is going to offer Batacat care going to win an election over somebody like Trump? Come on, man. So something big here is happening. Don't know what it is yet. Verse 20, thus saith the Lord, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season, then may also my covenant be broken with David my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne, and with the Levites and the priests and the ministers. As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand and the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant and the Levites that minister unto me. So God addresses the claim that foreign nations are making about Israel and Judah, that God has abandoned them. And God here is going to explain where in verse 23, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah, saying, and this is the last part of it here. I'm going to tie it all together here at the end. Concernest thou not what this people have spoken, saying, the two families which the Lord hath chosen, he hath even cast them off. Thus they have despised my people, that they should be no more a nation before them. And thus saith the Lord, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinance of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant, so that I will not take any of the seed to be rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For I will cause their captivity to return and have mercy on them. So again, he is addressing the claims that foreign nations are making about Israel and Judah, and God has abandoned him. And God explains that His attachment to his people is a certain and predictable as day and night and the turning of a season. And so, repeatedly, throughout the book of Jeremiah, God asserts himself as creator and sustainer of the earth and that all that is in it. And by doing so, God not only reminds his people of his faithfulness to them and his inability to abandon them despite their sin, but also, in contrast, his character with the false gods his people have experimented with. Now, I, for one, as we have said in several shows, not one sparrow falls to the ground outside of the will of God. Meaning, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Okay, sake of arguing, let's just say that they're able to steal this election. Biden does get it. Well, guess what? Not one sparrow falls to the ground outside of the will of God. So, obviously, this was the will of God for Biden to get it. But with all that has been being uncovered over the last 4 years in stages, I know I'm the world's worst when it comes to patience, but I have been wanting to see it all unfold within a week, and let's get it over with. Let's deal with these people and move on. But we have been seeing more and more of other things that we didn't even consider being shown, being exposed to us, and now we're coming to a precipice. We're coming to an important part in our existence as a nation. So which way is it going to be? Justice or judgment? Now, I know not one man is without sin. I understand that. I know that every single one of us are corrupt and crooked in the eyes of the Lord. There was only one that was perfect, and that was Christ himself. And although sin is sin in God's eyes, whether it be murder or a little white lie, I get that. So as a whole, we are a corrupt nation. But for the majority of the people, we're merely just committing sin. These other people that have been in charge and in power have been committing abominations. Now, I know that sin's sin in God's eyes, but there has got to be another level for abomination versus sin. You see what I'm saying here? And I think the iniquities, meaning they know it's wrong, but they still do it. At least if we do something wrong, our spirit or the Holy Spirit convicts our spirit, and then we repent from it, try not to do it again. And if we do it again, we ask for forgiveness. These people don't. These people continue on in their iniquity. They are the rulers and owners of this earth. I mean, I know this is not our home, but we still have work to do. So is what is coming going to be the ultimate judgment? I have been talking to a lot of people about what's going on with the sun right now, and I haven't fully researched this in depth to really share it with you yet. I don't want to mislead you, but we have things that happen to be in the works via our solar system that's pretty fascinating if you think about it. I'll cover that later once I learn some more, but there is something spiritual going on. As I shared just a second ago, we have the Trump supporters out in Washington, D.C. singing hymns, crying out to God, crying out for his power. We're not rioting. We're not being hateful. We're out there loving and understanding, and we're calling upon God's help, folks. So will he answer us tonight? It's hard to tell right now as we sit here. But when we dive into what all has been happening this week, you're going to find out. There's been a lot of people this week that's been fired we're going to go into. And we're going to talk about some of our new Supreme Court members, information that we found out this week. It's pretty eye-opening, man. It's pretty cool stuff. So, again, just like we opened the show with, Sidney Powell has said she's going to release the Kraken. So we know the Kraken is just a mythological creature, but it is the most feared in that mythological story. So it's going to get exciting, folks. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back after this.
Smokehouse.
To talk with Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. Then dial the access code 252380, followed by the pound sign, and you will be placed in the queue.
Call in and join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say will be used against you.
You are not listening. I want your job to be taken from you.
A protest has turned violent in California, Berkeley.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things one could say we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
The only way we separate the good ideas from the bad ideas is to be free to say whatever we want about them.
Anything you say will be used against you.
There's no free speech for fascists.
Your posts on Facebook, Twitter, and social media will be saved to shame you.
Kevin Hart has stepped down from hosting this year's Oscars.
Anything you say that we don't like will be used to shut you up. You can't be funny.
It's creating an atmosphere of fear and repression, and it's gonna bust.
You cannot think differently.
It makes it difficult for you to learn from other people.
Isn't it spooky that we're having this discussion?
You can't challenge us.
Kids grew up dipped in Purell, playing soccer games where they never kept score.
There is no debate.
The type of diversity that they hate is diversity of thought.
We reserve the right to be offended by everything.
No university should ever create a safe space.
You're not going to protect people, and so the best you can do is to make them strong.
It bothers me for the young people who are being deprived of anything that could open their minds.
You have the right to remain silent.
Well, so this week, Ocasio-Cortez, she tweeted, "Is anyone archiving these Trump psychopaths for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future? I foresee decent probability of many deleted tweets, writings, photos in the future." And then she tweeted, "LOL at the party of personal responsibility being upset at the idea of being responsible for their behavior over the last 4 years." Threatening. Folks, we have a sitting member of Congress threatening one half of the United States. And Senator Marsha Blackburn, the Republican senator here in Tennessee, she has responded to an initiative from far-left Democrats and never-Trump Republicans aiming to target supporters of President Trump by adding them to a list and holding them accountable after the election. And Blackburn's remarks were made in a tweet which quoted the announcement of the Trump Accountability Project. That's right. These Democrats are creating a Trump Accountability Project. And it aims to make sure anyone who took a paycheck to help Trump undermine America is held responsible for what they did. Let me share that with you again. The Trump Accountability Project, it aims to make sure anyone who took a paycheck to help Trump undermine America is held responsible for what they did. And so Marsha Blackburn tweeted back Ocasio-Cortez and said, if by undermining America you mean stopping Democrat socialists, not defunding police and blocking the Green New Deal, then add me to your list. So, folks, this is what we're dealing with here. I don't think we realize the degree at which these people are willing to go if they do land control over this nation. I mean, this is the extent. I mean, they're coming for us. The crosshairs are on us. But Trump this week, he has upset a lot of Democrats. You know, we've been saying for a long time, Trump's playing chess with these people, and he's 10 steps ahead of them every time you turn around. Well, one interesting thing that Trump did was he fired a gentleman by the name of Mark Esper. If you're unfamiliar with who Mark Esper is, he is the Secretary of Defense. Basically, he's the main guy. He is the one that takes Trump's orders in control of the military. And it has been said that with this election fraud that has taken place, if they're able to push it far enough and then Trump refused to concede to the election, then this Esper fella will be the one to call the military in to remove Trump. This was the deep state plant that they had, the guy who could remove Trump from the White House via the military. So this week, Trump has fired him. And he has also fired a few others. Check this out. He fired James Anderson, who is a Pentagon acting police chief. He fired Joseph Kernan, which is an undersecretary for intelligence. He's fired Jennifer Stewart, who is Esper's former chief of staff. Esper's, you know, the Secretary of Defense, okay? Fired Jennifer Stewart, who was his chief of staff. He fired a guy named Mark Toome, and he's the deputy chief of staff to the Undersecretary of the Defense for Policy. And he fired Brian Ware, who is a top cybersecurity official at the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the CISA. So Trump's been removing some pretty heavy hitters this week. And Dave with X22, he shared an interesting tweet about John Brennan here that once Esper, which was the Secretary of Defense, you know, the deep state's guy that could call the military in to remove Trump, Brennan is panicking. Listen to what Dave had to say.
And we're seeing it happening right now. But now what's happening is Trump is shifting everything on them. They didn't expect this to happen. They didn't realize he knew as much as he did. They didn't realize he was monitoring the situation since the midterms. This is why the 2020 elections are safeguarded. But you can see the deep state players, they're panicking like we've never seen before. This is John Brennan. John Brennan went into panic mode after Trump terminated Defense Secretary Mark Esper. Why would he go into panic mode? Because Esper was part of their plan. He said in 70 days, and this is coming from Brennan, you can do a lot of damage in 70 days. He is still president of the United States, and he's going to carry out these vendettas against other individuals. I'm very concerned what he might do in his remaining 70 days in office. Is he going to take some type of military action? Is he going to release some type of information that could, in fact, threaten our national security interests? He wants the vice president to use the 25th Amendment to get rid of Trump right now. Does this sound like an individual who's confident that Biden has it? Or does this sound like an individual that realizes the jig is up? They know exactly what we did. He's going to remain as president, and he's going to push everything that he has to get these people. Brennan is panicking.
And that is a good thing to say with the way these people are now speaking out on the things that Trump has done. Now, we know Trump plays chess. I mean, we get that. And so he'll make a move here because that won't make sense, because he knows that later on in the game he's got to make this move and he's got to have that piece there already in order for this next move to work out. And so, with that being said, that's why and Trump does not tell what he's going to do either. He told us that before he even got elected. He said, I'll never tell you. I'll never let the enemy know what I'm doing. And he don't. He just acts. Now, if we sit back and we look at all of this, we see that they pretty much have lost everything now. I don't know if you've noticed in the last couple of days, but this coronavirus junk, the media has just literally gone ape over this COVID. We're seeing the foreign nations, the UK. Sister Jamie was telling us last week in the UK that they've been locked down now for a couple of weeks, and it's going to continue. And we generally follow Europe by 6 weeks. And now what are they talking? The UK, they've been down what? Help me out, Jamie. Y'all been down, I think, 2 weeks now, locked down? And so that only leaves us 4 more weeks. And look at what the media is telling us now. Oh, we're going to have to go back into lockdown. We have Biden's advisor now telling Joe Biden that in order to really stamp this out, we're going to have to shut the entire United States down for a minimum of 6 weeks. And Joe told us. He told us right there in his debate. He said, yeah, if the science tells me to shut this down, then I'm going to shut it down. I mean, so he's just telling you right there. And they're already telling Biden, shut her down for 6 weeks. All right, in the UK, thank you, Jamie. Yes, we are supposed to be freed on the 2nd of December, supposedly. Well, don't hold your breath. Let's see. Cases. Okay, here we go. Let's see. That's the wrong one here. But I bet they'll do their best to ruin Christmas. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're already trying to ruin Thanksgiving. They're already trying to ruin Thanksgiving. California telling people you can't have a gathering. Chicago's mayor, Lightfoot, telling them you cannot gather for Thanksgiving. Folks, this is ridiculous. One thing that gets my blood boiling is, man, this is the United States. Where's the backbone? Where are the men telling you cannot do this, you cannot do that? Are you out of your mind? My blood boils. I will not wear a mask anywhere. I refuse to do it. I haven't done it. I won't do it. And I'll fight and argue with anybody that says that I have to. I'm not doing it. I'm not following for the narrative. If there is any type of virus going around, it's just a flu. Obviously, it's a bad flu. I mean, it's affecting people with already other types of conditions. Yeah, I guess if they're getting it and it's putting them down. But my goodness, people, how are we just cowardly bowing to this? My wife, it was her birthday yesterday, and I came home wore out because I'd only had 4 hours of sleep, and I just was a zombie. And I told her today, we'll go do something for your birthday. So we went out to eat, and just the restaurants, everybody that wears a mask, it just cracks me up. No wonder we're in the place that we're in right now. But anyway, don't worry, because Joe Biden, he's going to give us Batacad care.
I can tell you this. Excuse my language, but think about it. Barack and I think it's a right for people to have Batacad care.
So I guess Biden can get it, then he can give us Batacad care, and it'll take care of all of it. Well, I know Sister Jamie says she won't wear a mask either over there in the UK, and you wouldn't believe the amount of grief that you get. Trust me, I know I get grief over here too. I do. So what do you not see? Recent COVID death percentage list. That's true, Pat. Yeah. All we see are cases, and And who knows whether these are real or counterfeit cases. Well, and this has been my problem all along. I mean, if this thing is killing people like it is, why are we not finding people that live by themselves dead in their houses? Why aren't the homeless laying dead on the street? Why aren't we finding truck drivers dead in their truck? We're not. We're not seeing any of that. If we hadn't been told there's a pandemic, we would have never known. But they just keep drilling and drilling. You know, you say it long enough, people are going to believe it. People are going to believe it. So what exactly has Bill Gates got going on? Okay, so we've got now listen, we've got the media fanning the flames of this COVID and keeping it alive. And you know good and well with the millions of people that were out at Washington, D.C. this weekend, all we're going to hear is all these Trump supporters, they're super spreaders. Now, they didn't say anything about the Biden supporters last week after the election, coming out there and celebrating and parading and hugging and dancing and doing all their liberal hoopla. Not a word was said about COVID being spread there, but I guarantee you, all the Trump supporters that came out this weekend in D.C., mark my word, the cases are going to go through the roof, and it was a Trump parade, it was a super spreader, it was the most terrible thing that they could have done. Mark my word. But that's okay, Biden's going to bring us Batacad care. So there's really nothing to fear. But interesting here that Bill Gates is now talking about an actual biological attack. Check this out.
We also face a new threat that the next epidemic has a good chance of originating on a computer screen of a terrorist intent on using genetic engineering to create a synthetic version of the smallpox virus or a contagious and highly deadly strain of flu. And sure, at the hand of a terrorist, epidemiologists showed through their models that a respiratory spread pathogen would kill more than 30 million people in less than a year. And there is a reasonable probability of that taking place.
And the thing that makes this such a disturbing scenario is the words he used, the hints he makes that, well, it could be a quirk of nature or it could be a terror attack. You just never know. When behind it all, there's a mentality and an organization that wants to reduce the population and that relies on fear to control political events. And while ostensibly this is a security issue to be prevented, what makes this creepy statement even more diabolical is the fact that Bill Gates is the very one who's made these veiled statements before about vaccines lowering the population by 10 or 15%.
Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
The disease itself can also be spread by the vaccines because there's blowback, there's resistance, and there's a triggering of autoimmune effects that has the possibility of spreading a viral mutation that no one is going to be prepared for. It's the kind of thing that Bill Gates is talking about.
So sit back and ask yourself, all right, Bill Gates created Microsoft. You know, the Bible tells us they'll be known by their fruits, right? Okay. So years ago, back when computers first started becoming popular, and we had Windows 95 or whatever it was back then, Microsoft, Bill Gates, created a computer, got everybody on computers, and then all of a sudden a virus was created that infected computers. So what did you have to do in order to protect yourself from that virus? You had to go to Microsoft and you had to buy a Microsoft virus protection software to run on your computer. How convenient. How convenient. So are we seeing a pattern here with Bill Gates? I mean, he's the one pushing the vaccines. He's the one funding all of these vaccines. When we have a virus show up And now he's going to have a cure for the actual virus that infects your body. And now, check this out. Bill Gates is the one pushing the deal that if you don't get this vaccine that he is funding and that he is responsible for, then you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to buy, sell, trade, go to restaurants, fly on a plane, go to work, do anything. Interestingly enough, when the virus infects your computer, unless you go buy the antivirus software, then you can't do anything with your computer because the virus infects it. Are we seeing a pattern here? Is it obvious what Bill Gates is all about? And now he's warning us that an actual bio attack from a terrorist is coming? How many times have we shared in past shows when Rod Rosenstein was part of the gig under Trump and doing all this, this Russia, back during the Russia hoax and all that? Rod Rosenstein was a big player in that deep state figure whose sister, Deborah Messner, is that her name? Deborah Messner Rosenstein, or Deborah Rosenstein Messenger? She is the head of the bioweapons down there. So we know she'll be a deep state player. And if she has the control over all that, what do we my point is if this virus from a terrorist gets released, I think we have a good idea who it may come from, or at least who's funding it anyway. So, these are the things that we're looking at. They're putting everybody on a list who are Trump supporters, so that if they win, they'll know who to come after. We have Kamala Harris basically stating that for all of those that have voted for Trump and have been basically trying to stop what they're doing, there's going to be hell to pay. Nancy Pelosi has told us before in some of her speeches that there's going to be collateral damage if they don't get their way. And then we see what actually happens when they don't get their way. They riot and burn down the cities and beat people. So what do you think is going to happen if this election turns and it goes to Trump? What do you think's coming down the pipe? What do you think's coming down the pipe when all this stuff is being released? Now, I know I shared with you in the very opening of the program where Sister Sidney Powell said that she's going to release the Kraken. But let me share with you now the entire interview, and it's a little lengthy, but you're going to want to hear every word of this. And she mentions that in the middle of this interview, but listen very closely to the things that are spoken that have surfaced this week that Sidney Powell is telling Lou Dobbs.
Well, joining us tonight is Sidney Powell, a member of President Trump's legal team, General Flynn's defense attorney, a great American and prominent appellate lawyer. Great to have you with us, Sidney. Let's start with
Thank
Dominion. A straight-out disavowal of any claim of fraud against the company, its software or machines. Your reaction?
Well, I can hardly wait to put forth all the evidence we have collected on Dominion, starting with the fact it was created to produce altered voting results in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez, and then shipped internationally to manipulate votes for purchase in other countries, including this one. It was funded by money from Venezuela and Cuba, and China has a role in it also. So if you want to talk about foreign election interference, we certainly have it now. We have staggering statistical evidence. We have staggering testimony from witnesses, including one who was personally in briefings when all of this was discussed and planned. beginning with Hugo Chavez and how it was designed there, and then saw it happening in this country. As soon as the states shut down on election night and stopped counting, those are the states where the most egregious problems occurred. We also need to look at, and we're beginning to collect evidence on the financial interests of some of the governors and secretaries of state who actually bought into the Dominion systems, surprisingly enough. Hunter Biden type graft to line their own pockets by getting a voting machine in that would either make sure their election was successful or they got money for their family from it.
Well, that's straightforward. It may take, you're going to have to be quick to go through and to produce that investigation and the results of it. The December deadlines are approaching for electors, and just as we saw in 2000 with Bush v. Gore, how critical are those deadlines, and how urgent does that make your investigation and discovery?
Well, for fraud this serious, I think even if the states are stupid enough to go ahead and certify the votes where we know the machines were operating and producing altered election results, if they're stupid enough to do that, then they will be set aside by the fraud also. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. President Trump won this election in a landslide. It's going to be irrefutable, and patriots are coming forward every day, all day, faster than we can collect their information with testimony they're willing to give under oath about how their votes were stolen and how the machines operated. They were updated the night of the election, sometimes after the election. We've got statistical evidence that shows hundreds of thousands of votes being just put in and replicated. It's going to be, there needs to be a massive criminal investigation, and it's going to affect millions of voters and elections.
With these allegations, these charges, is the FBI already carrying out an investigation of these voting companies where their servers are domiciled? And in at least three instances, we know they're in foreign countries. Tell us where the Justice Department is in all of this.
I wish I knew. I'm not on the inside, so I'm not privy to that information. I know that even Democratic senators and congresspeople for years have reported problems with this system to the FBI and to the government, and nobody's done a blooming thing about it. The people in the election security part of the Department of Homeland Security need to be fired yesterday. They're absolutely ridiculous. Of course, Chris Wray needs to be fired, too, because the only FBI interview of any witness was to intimidate him and try to get him to change his truthful testimony 4 hours by an anti-Trump FBI agent. They still have politics infecting the FBI instead of just following the law. We are on the precipice of, this is essentially a new American revolution. And anybody who wants this country to remain free needs to step up right now. These are federal felonies. Altering a vote or changing a ballot is a federal felony. People need to come forward now and get on the right side of this issue and report the fraud they know existed in Dominion voting systems, because that's what it was created to do. It was its sole original purpose. It has been used all over the world to defy the will of people who wanted freedom.
Sydney, at the outset of this broadcast, I said that this is the culmination of what has been over a 4-year effort to overthrow this president, to first deny his candidacy, the election, but then to overthrow his presidency. This looks like the effort to carry out an end game in the effort against him. Do you concur?
Oh, absolutely. And it's been organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, the big tech companies, the social media companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to release the Kraken.
Well, good, because this is an extraordinary and such a dangerous moment in our history. I really am very concerned for the country. I am very concerned for all Americans. And I have a feeling that most Democrats are first Americans and not Democrats. They have to be as alarmed as any one of us. Cindy, we're glad that you are on the charge to straighten out all of this. It is a foul mess, and it is far more sinister than any of us could have imagined, even over the course of the past 4 years. You get the last word, Sydney.
It is indeed a very foul mess. It is farther and wider and deeper than we ever thought, but we are going to go after it, and I am going to expose every one of them.
So we need to be in prayer for Sidney Powell. We need to be in prayer for Rudy Giuliani. We need to be in prayer for Trump and his family. We need to be in prayer for all of these people because you better believe that Sidney Powell's safety is in jeopardy. But I do believe there's the hand of the Almighty that's upon these people. Now, many people say that Trump's not going to do anything. He's just going to keep it tied up in court. Biden's going to get it. There are people on Facebook that's pretty much giving up hope on old Trump. And we're just going to have to stand in support of him and watch how this plays out. But some interesting developments that have happened, information that has come out. We all remember the 2000 Bush Gore fiasco in Florida. I believe it was Broward. Was it Broward County that kept that one tied up as well? But anyway, the election fraud that was going on in Florida in 2000. Check this out. George Bush assembled a top-notch team of attorneys, and through a variety of different legal maneuvers involving courts and recounts, he had eventually solidified his victory. And we remember this, but it was Bush's team of attorneys in 2000 that is fairly interesting, because these three attorneys from that team, well, they just happened to be Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts and his two newest colleagues on the Supreme Court today, Justice Brett Kavanaugh and the newly elected or the newly positioned Justice Amy Barrett. Two of the current sitting justices, Clarence Thomas and Stephen Breyer, were also on the highest court at the time. And predictably, they had different opinions on the matters, with Breyer taking Gore's side and Thomas taking Bush's side. But for good measure, Neil Gorsuch also has ties to the era. Neil Gorsuch, of course, is on the Supreme Court. And he has ties to the era, as W had nominated him to serve on the 10th Circuit in 2006. So what does this all mean? It means that we have several judges who are no stranger to being involved in complex legal battles over ballot shenanigans. So perhaps this is the tie that bound Trump's nominations, knowing that there was a high likelihood of widespread voter fraud in the re-election campaign, and he wanted to get the best judges in there to combat it. So let's combine this with the 215 other judges that Trump has appointed during his presidency so far. And you have to start feeling good about the federal court involved in this sham election. So, folks, we have 3 Supreme Court justices that have known all about this election fraud from 2000. Sitting now on the Supreme Court, now on our side, on Trump's side. So how is this going to play out? Are the recounts going to happen? Are the local judges or the federal judges going to throw out all these ballots? Oh, interestingly enough, even though Trump's pulling ahead in Pennsylvania, it has been ruled that the ballots that came in after the polls closed now have to be thrown out and can't be counted. But how convenient the election officials in Pennsylvania has lost the envelopes that these ballots have come in. And so there's no date there's no, there's no way of telling which ballots came in after the election. How convenient. I mean, this just keeps getting deeper and deeper. So is this going to have to go to the Supreme Court? Well, I agree with you, Pat. I don't have any faith in John Roberts either. But let's step back and take a bird's eye view of this. When the evidence gets handed to the Supreme Court, I know Justice Roberts, I know the deep state has something on him, okay? But, I mean, when all the evidence comes in, John Roberts is going to see they've got us. They've got us on every corner. There's nothing we can do to get out of this. So even if he does rule with the deep state, the evidence is there. And so all I can say is he's got to side with truth and law and justice, because, I mean, he's going down either way for his role in all of this stuff. I mean, come on, man. we gotta. But I agree. I don't trust any of them, really, to be honest with you. But there's going to be so much that's uncovered and so much that is going to be laid out in this that they're caught. Their hand is in the cookie jar. There's no way out of this. None. And so here we have the Dominion software, and we talked about how Satan wants to take dominion of the globe, dominion of the earth. Here's a little explanation of the Dominion software.
Election systems across the U.S. are found to have deleted millions of votes cast for President Trump. According to an unaudited analysis of data obtained from Edison Research, states using Dominion voting systems may have switched as many as 435,000 votes from President Trump to Joe Biden. Now, the author also finds another 2.7 million Trump votes appear to have been deleted by Dominion, including almost 1 million votes in Pennsylvania alone. Analysts say the theft and destruction of votes are attributed to so-called glitches in Dominion software, and the extent to which this affected results can be verified by hand recounts of votes in each state. Well, President Trump is slamming...
Okay, thank you, Sister Sherry. That was Volusia County, Florida, was the Bush-Gore shenanigans. Volusia County. I thought it was Broward County. My fault. Thanks for the correction. So that is a little bit about what the Dominion software was supposedly doing. Now, they were calling it glitches, right? But we shared with you last week how the gentleman was laying it out as how when they count the votes, they don't count the vote as one vote. They count it for a percentage. That way they can manipulate the percentages as they go and keep their candidate in there programmed to stay ahead with a certain percentage to make it look legit. And so that's kind of the way that it operates. Now, here, check out what this gentleman has to say.
Is that hammer is a...
Okay, that's the wrong one. I apologize. Hold on. I misnamed it. Let's see. Let's see where it's at here. And maybe I'll come up on it here in just a moment. Okay. Well, I'll come up with it in a moment. Basically, it was a gentleman who said, and he was part of, I don't remember his name, but he was part of like the manufacturing of this software. a whistleblower, and basically what he said was there was no glitch at all, because if there was a glitch, then it would be sporadic, and it would be doing that for both candidates. This is not a glitch. This was a purposed program to be set for the individual they want to win, which is true. I mean, if it was glitching and doing all kind of crazy stuff, it would just be all over the place. But when it's geared for one candidate and it continues to do it for that candidate, and folks, listen, this type of effort has been used in every election that we have had since who knows. This is what I'm saying. The illusion is though we had a choice. We've never had a choice. They've just been keeping us at bay all of this time while their candidate was getting in, and they were putting the pieces of their globalist rise together all these number of years, and they were keeping us asleep. Well, now we're awake to all of this. And if you remember, when they shut down at about, 9, 10 o'clock on election night, these states just said, we're done counting, send everybody home. And when everybody left, then the ones counting the votes stayed behind, and then they just continued bringing in the mail-in ballots to pump up Biden. And everybody woke up the next morning, and Biden was thousands and thousands of points ahead, when at the time they said they were going to stop counting, Trump was winning this in a landslide. And so what happened here was their little software, there were so many votes for Trump. It was such a landslide, and they knew that it was going to be a landslide. That's why they were pushing this COVID, pushing the mail-in votes, because, yes, their software would have worked, but it would have been blatantly obvious if they didn't have the mail-in votes to compensate for the rise in Biden's numbers. It would have literally posted their illegal voting software right on the main screen. I mean, it would have stood out like a sore thumb. So this was the purpose of the COVID and the mail-in voting. So when Trump was winning by a landslide, they had to shut it down, send everybody home, and then bring in their mail-in ballots that night while everybody slept to compensate for these votes. Many states were using excuses, and Dave with X22, he shared some information. We remember Georgia, their excuse that they had to shut down was because there was a pipeline that had ruptured. A water line had busted, and that's why they had to close. Check this out.
In Atlanta, Georgia, they used the excuse that there was a water main break. And it came out saying, yes, there's a water main break. We're going to have to stop the counting. But the water main break wasn't anywhere near where they were counting the votes. And what's very interesting about all of this is that there are certain individuals. One of them is attorney Paul J. Jaskowski. He attempted to obtain information on the reported water main break in Atlanta. He sent a letter to and requested any information related to the water main break under the Georgia Open Records Act. And this is what he wrote in his request. Please accept this correspondence as a request for production and inspection of records under the Georgia Open Records Act, OCGA, Section 50-1870. Please produce for inspection and copying the following records. All public records related to the burst pipe at State Farm Arena that occurred on or about November 3rd. So this is what he wanted. He wanted all this information. So in response to the only public records, what did they give him? They gave him text messages. The message were with Senior Vice President of the Atlanta Hawks, Jeffrey Stiles, who called it a slow leak that was contained quickly. And he said the entire thing was highly exaggerated. And when you read the tweets, that's exactly what it says, that it was a slow leak. And this is from Jeffrey Stiles. No, sir, it was highly exaggerated. It was a slow leak that caused about an hour and a half delay. So were there any work permits? Was there a pipe that burst? No, there were no repair orders, work orders, or invoices from anybody. Nothing happened. They used it as an excuse to shut down the elections.
It's all coming out, folks. The truth is coming out. It's just dripping out as we speak. And thank you, Sister Sherry. I was going to that next. I had already had that in the revolver, ready to pull the trigger on. But folks, interesting stuff. More stuff is coming out. Let me find it. I just had it right here, and then I lost it. Oh, well, live radio. Where'd it go? Anyway, there has been an email that has been intercepted, and it's an interesting little email, and it's I don't know who this gentleman is, but I'll share it with you. I've got 400 things coming in, and let me get it here. Where's it at? Where's that? That one. Let's see here. Nope. Just had it. A Hawaiian judge rules that death certificates are a valid form of voter ID. Interesting. Thank you, Sherry, for that one. I didn't know that at all. Pretty crazy. I had it right here, man. Okay, here we go. Found it. Sorry about that, folks. This is from Todd Mackler. And the subject of this is the dogs are loose. This is an intercepted email. And then Todd Mackler, he is of Smartmatic Programming out of Newport Pumper, Virginia. And it says, hey, guys, as you can see from the subject, the dogs are loose. I repeat, the dogs are loose. Loose dogs, guys. We know what to do from here. I'll be meeting with Soros later this week for some pre-programming of machines. These machines will be humming in November. So, folks, this is the evidence now that's it's being shown to the public. It's all coming out. It's all going to come out in the wash. So it was asked of Joe Biden back during the debates that, you know, if he starts pulling ahead, if he seems to have won the election, is he going to claim victory? And Joe Biden, he said he's going to wait until all of the states have certified before he says anything. Let me remind you of what he said.
Urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it.
Okay, so he agreed that he was going to wait till all the votes were counted. And what was Pelosi and them all out there saying? And Clinton, every vote has to be counted. All right, well, then why didn't he wait? If they knew, obviously they knew with all these mail-in ballots that Biden was going to win. So why didn't Joe Biden just sit back and wait until all the votes were counted? Why is the news media immediately pushing him as president and treating him as such? He's coming out doing speeches now, putting his cabinet together. He's starting the procedure or the process to get his administration going, and the news media is just right there with him. What was the need in him doing this to his voter base? Because we know what's going to happen, folks. When all the evidence is out and Trump has handed the election in a landslide, because that's obvious what has happened. Have you taken a look at D.C., of the millions of people that showed up in D.C. today? Oh, and again, mark my word, that's going to be a super spreader. Now, Trump has said that he's not going to shut this nation down again. And at least until January the 20th, hopefully we won't be shut down. But if they drag their feet on this, which, you know, it don't look like they're going to. It looks like they've got ace up their sleeve on stopping these shenanigans. But let's just say, for the sake of arguing, let's say that they do drag their feet on this and Biden gets in there. The first thing he's going to do is shut this place down. We're done. And we can't handle another shutdown. Can't. Especially for 6 weeks. We're done. We're done. We're going to be like Venezuela within a matter of weeks. Guarantee you. So they must know something, meaning for them to push Biden as quickly as they did, they must know that something is not going to be in their favor in the coming days. But what are they doing? They're fanning the flames of their base. They're fanning the flames of Antifa. They're building them up and building them up and building them up, thinking that Joe Biden has got this. And the longer this strings out, then the more these people, again, what's the liberal news got Biden up at 300 and something electoral votes now? Because we know that when the truth comes out, riots are going to ensue, and it's going to be riots like we've never seen before. Never seen before. And they're going to step it up a notch. They're going to start hurting people, stabbing people, and killing people in this one. You know, Governor DeSantis of Florida, you know, he's working on a new bill now. You know, the castle doctrine, where you have the right to defend your home. You have the right to use deadly force to defend yourself. He is expanding on this now. He's working on a bill for the state of Florida to be able to shoot rioters and looters if you're being threatened. See, this is how serious it's getting. It's how serious it's getting. So, listen to what Pelosi and Schumer are talking about right now in regards to this COVID. Because, see, the COVID is their tool, people. This is why I'm trying to say, you know, and I'll admit, you know, back, even though we were seeing the fraudulent videos coming out of China, when they were showing people dropping dead, but there were leaves on the trees and people were wearing shorts, when it was supposedly the COVID that was killing them, but yet it was wintertime and 19 degrees in China. You know, even though those videos were coming out then, trying to scare the people, and somebody brought up the fact that it's wintertime in China, why are they wearing shorts and there's leaves on the trees? And then they changed the videos, and then the winter-looking videos started coming out. Even though that fraud was at the very beginning, I was willing to give this COVID a chance. Okay? I was willing to take it with a grain of salt, because I'm the type of person, I've got to see it for myself. Well, I saw it for myself, and there was no evidence to me that people are just dropping dead everywhere. There's not. My career, I am in the worst hygienic career you could ever have. Okay? I mean, we have people in my career that don't take baths for days. Their food intake is nothing but just greasy hot dogs and nachos and chili, okay? I mean, the most unhealthy career you could be in, and it hasn't affected the trucking industry. But I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. And when I didn't see the evidence, I was done with COVID back in March, okay? Done with it. So they've been pushing it and using it to their advantage. They've been closing down that what is good and keeping open that what is just evil and lawless. They have been coming against the church, but leaving abortion clinics open. When their people get out and protest, riot, or have celebrations, you don't even hear about COVID. Matter of fact, they're so arrogant, they come out and say, well, there's been no evidence that any has spread from these type of events. But you let Trump have a rally, or somebody that's a Trump supporter go out without a mask, well, then they're super spreaders. And I guarantee you, this march they had in D.C. this weekend, all next week, all you're going to hear is about how the COVID has gone through the roof because these Trump supporters had come out. So they're using it as their tool to manipulate the public to do what they want them to do. And here is Pelosi and Schumer this week on COVID.
So stop the circus and get to work on what really matters to the American people, their health and their economic security.
I have a very simple message for Senate Republicans. The election is over. It wasn't close. President Trump lost. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. Kamala Harris will be the next vice president of the United States. Senate Republicans, stop denying reality. Stop deliberately and recklessly sowing doubt about our democratic process and start focusing on COVID.
So why are they really pushing the COVID now? All right, we've already established it's the tool, for them to wield control over the people because they know that their election is fraudulent. They know they've been caught, and they know that the truth is soon going to surface. So they resort back to their tool, and they're pushing it like they never have. And I guarantee you, mark my word, after this weekend, what happened in D.C., and Mark Dice shares some information. I was telling you that Lori Lightfoot in Chicago is canceling Thanksgiving, and all these dictatorial Democrat governors are closing everything. Here you go.
Since liberals oppose nuclear families, traditional gender roles, and American holidays, with Thanksgiving now less than 2 weeks away, many are calling for dinner to basically be canceled because of the coronavirus. California Governor Gavin Newsom says that you're not allowed to have people from more than 3 different households over for dinner. Everybody has to eat outside and sit at least 6 feet apart. Seriously, he referred to the new California Department of Health guidelines, which literally prohibits more than 3 households from getting together. It's literally the first rule. Quote, gatherings that include more than 3 households are prohibited. He also wants people to wear face masks to dinner. When gathering, face coverings must be worn in accordance with the California Department of Health guidelines. It gets even better, though. They have rules for singing, chanting, and shouting, even while you're at the outdoor gathering. Singing, chanting, shouting, and physical exertion significantly increase the risk of COVID-19 transmission, they say, because these activities increase the release of respiratory droplets and fine aerosols into the air. All people who are singing or chanting should wear a face covering at all times while singing or chanting, including anyone who is leading a song or chant. People who are singing or chanting are strongly encouraged to do so quietly, or at least below the volume of a normal speaking voice. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot has gone even further, saying that you shouldn't have anyone over for Thanksgiving. Stay at home unless for essential reasons, she tweeted. Stop having guests over, including family members who do not live with you. Avoid non-essential travel and cancel traditional Thanksgiving plans.
You must cancel the normal Thanksgiving plans. You must cancel the normal Thanksgiving plans.
Of course, Mayor Beetlejuice will have Thanksgiving guests over as usual right after getting her hair cut. She's the mayor who got caught getting her hair cut after she ordered all non-essential businesses, including salons, to close back in April. But here she is last Saturday in the streets of Chicago, not wearing a mask and not social distancing, celebrating the mainstream media declaring that old Joe was the projected winner of the 2020 selection.
This is a great day for our country. We get to take our democracy back.
As we can see, do as I say, not as I do. These Hitlerin, is that how you would pronounce it? The communist, they're trying to take over this nation, folks. Trying to take over this nation. Check this out.
Who keeps us free and how we obtained this freedom. Because without remembering it, without remembering our history, we can't do better. And this is what the deep state, the central bank, wants to do. They want to take this away from us. This is why they were destroying the statues. This is why they were saying that, oh no, we don't want to stand for the national anthem. They were trying to remove history. And it wasn't just happening here in this country. It was happening around the world. They were trying to usher in their new system, the reset. And we can see that the deep state, the mainstream media, they're now pushing their reset agenda. They're going to be using lockdowns to bring down the world economy. We're already seeing it in Italy, where they're saying that they want to have complete lockdowns. It's happening in France. It's happening in Germany. Actually, The Hill put out, Merkel's second COVID-19 wave will likely be more severe than the first. They're already preparing this. But what do we see the people doing? Well, out in Italy, they're having anti-lockdown protests. Out in France, they're having anti-lockdown protests. You know why? The people are being brought to the precipice. All of what we're seeing, it's about the reset. It's about dark winter. This is why the CEO of Pfizer decided to sell his stock as soon as he mentioned the vaccine. The stock shot up. He sold off 62%. Why would you sell off 62% if you have the vaccine? Is the virus real? Yes. Is it deadly? It's like the flu. What's fake about the whole thing? The mainstream media, the news about it. I think this individual knows that. I think he realizes that this vaccine is not going to be used in the end. And their stock's going to plummet. So he had to get out. And the mainstream media, the deep state, they're now shifting their narrative because they can't keep up with the fraud narrative anymore. It's falling apart. There's too much evidence out there, just like the riot evidence. Their narrative fell apart with the riots. And now they're shifting to this dark winter scenario.
And interesting where he was talking about, they were lying about the riots. If y'all remember, when the riots were taking place, all the news media, CNN and the liberal media, and even Jerry Nadler and all of them in Congress saying, there's no riots, man. There's just peaceful protests with just a few fires that have broken out, but there's no riots. Until they started seeing in the polls where people were tired of the Democrat Party for what they were doing and they were jumping ship. And then the news media decided, well, okay, there are riots. And then guess what? Shut down immediately when it started affecting their polls. Shut down immediately. And so here's what I believe. I believe that we're seeing the two sides here. All right. We saw back during the summer all the riots and the beatings and all that from the left. And now, we have all this election fraud going on. The election's not been called, and the Trump supporters are coming out in support of Trump, of course, but no riots, no hatred. It's love. It's unity. People are, like we shared at the beginning of the show, they were singing hymns to God. We've seen people praying over the election areas that were Trump supporters. So when this thing comes out, Trump has handed the election as he should, all hell's going to break loose, people. And you better be prepared for it. Because it's not going to be coming at the hands of Trump supporters. Now, Sister Elizabeth had shot a message where she was talking about, she keeps hearing about truck drivers going on strike. And many of you, I know, have seen videos of various truck drivers shooting, different videos on YouTube and Twitter and all that, stating that November the 29th there's going to be a trucker strike in order to protest this election and the way that Trump has been being treated. And I've been bombarded by folks wanting to know if that is true or not. And so I'm just going to tell you this. In my 26 years of driving a truck across these United States, there has been about 4 to 5 different times in those 26 years that the truck drivers were going to strike over something. And in those 4 or 5 years, it never surfaced. When the day came, the trucks were still rolling. The last one, or the last strike that was talked about happening, was back when the fuel prices were $5 a gallon for 18-wheelers. I was driving for a well-known flatbed company out of Arkansas at the time, and I lost my job because of the fuel prices. Because, as you know, these trucks, on average, they get anywhere from 6 to 7 miles per gallon. So you think about it. You know, your car may get 25, 30 miles per gallon. Well, these big trucks only get 6 to 7 miles per gallon. We carry anywhere from 100 gallons of fuel on our truck to 300 gallons, depending on what size tanks you have. So, you know, that's how we can travel long distances without stopping and having to get fuel at $6 a gallon so often, is because we carry an abundance of fuel. But the company I was driving for, they were wanting their trucks to at least get 6.5 miles per gallon during the time the price of fuel was $5 a gallon, so that they could save as much money as they could. Well, the truck that I had at that time, it was only getting like 5.8 miles per gallon, and I was doing all I could do to try to conserve fuel. It just wasn't working. So basically, they said, if your truck is not getting 6.5 miles per gallon, then you're costing us money. We don't even want you working for us. And there was about 250 of us that got fired. Now, could there have been legal action taken because of that? Probably so. But, you know, as long as you have a valid CDL in your pocket, you can you don't have to worry about being out of a job. So I went with another company. But during that fuel issue, when it was $5 a gallon, there were a number of truck drivers that were going to strike over that. As a matter of fact, they actually created websites and put out flyers. As far as the truck strikes have gone, in the past, it's just been word of mouth. But this one strike, they actually built a website, had petitions, and had flyers go out to everybody that this was going to happen on this date. And the day came. And I think we saw truckers running 25 miles an hour in each lane of major cities as they passed through in their protest. And it clogged up traffic for the time that it took those trucks to go through the city. But other than that, that was it. I have not seen any flyers. I haven't seen any websites built for this strike of November the 29th. So just outside, or just the videos I've seen on Twitter and YouTube and such of drivers talking about this. When you get on the CB radio and holler at other truckers and say, hey, man, have you heard about this strike on November the 20th? They don't know anything about it. So I think it's safe to say that November the 29th is going to come and all of the trucks are going to be rolling. And I say that because back then was before the electronic logs, okay? And it would have been a lot easier to perform a strike prior to the electronic logs and such. But now, since 2010, since all the electronic logs have come on board on these trucks, and we've had 10 years of this new breed, is what we call it. You know, the truck driver that has gone through school and learned it via the technical side of it, and don't really understand the true trucking and how it used to be. All they know is what they've been taught. I can guarantee you these guys are government controlled. I mean, they're not going to strike because their company's going to tell them not to strike. So I would not put really any faith in it. And I'm not trying to down the trucking industry, that they are not patriotic or anything. It's just the trucking industry has gotten so corporate and so electronically, the technology and the electronics has gotten so precise that you just can't strike because you just can't. Physically, you could pull your truck over and say, I'm not going to drive it for a week. But trust me, in this new electronic technological age with the type of truck driver that they have now, they're not going to strike. Okay? So I'm not... You may see a few cities get clogged up because you have a few old hands that might get out there and try to block major cities or something. But no, as far as trucks completely stopping across the United States, the store shelves going dry, not going to happen. So I don't think we have anything to worry about there. So with the evidence that we have been sharing with you tonight, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and the evidence that we have shown how the left, the deep state, is panicked, and they're trying everything that they can do to hold on to this election for themselves. Pompeo was out giving a speech, and a reporter asked him if Trump is going to give Biden his smooth transition into the White House. And listen to how Pompeo answered that question.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, mid-afternoon, will also be successful.
So there will be a smooth transition for Trump into his second term. That was from the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. So it does look like this is going to be ironed out before January the 20th. How it's going to be ironed out and how it'll play out and what the repercussions will be, I don't know. But with the things that have been happening, it looks as though God's hand is all over this. All over this. It's not only them. Kayleigh McEnany, is that her name? Press secretary. Check out what she had to say.
Some more affidavits coming forward. What do you think you have?
Yeah, that's right. There will be a number of affidavits filed today. I have a few just to preview with you. First is an individual who said they received a vote by mail, did not request one, went to the polls to cast her ballot, was told, sorry, you can't do that. You've already voted by mail. She didn't fill out the ballot that she received by mail. She merely discarded it, thinking it was a mistake. But nevertheless, that vote was cast. So there's those kinds of accusations. And then separately from that is a big systemic equal protection argument. And it's this, that in 7 counties, Democrat-leaning counties, if they received your ballot in advance, it's illegal to open those ballots until Election Day, the mail-in ballots. But somehow they were determining which ballots were not accurate, which were not properly done, and telling voters to fix them in advance in those 7 Democrat counties. But in 60 other counties, these voters were not given the same opportunity to fix their ballot. So we have a number of affidavits from voters who were not told to fix their ballot, while their Democrat counterparts in 7 counties were. So it was an unequal system and one that disenfranchised some while franchising others.
So it's coming out everywhere, from dead people voting to the fraudulent, you just name it. And reports are coming in now. Violence mars MAGA marches in D.C. as Antifa BLM counter-protesters lash out. Now, this is out of Fox News. Left-wing counter-protesters moved in during the pro-Trump MAGA march in Washington, leading to scattered confrontations and violence as police tried to keep control of the situation. They turned out in opposition to pro-Trump group rallying to protest the results of the election, which show a Joe Biden victory. The president himself even visited the demonstration with his motorcade. So now we've got Antifa showing up, causing violence, burning flags, and beating people. Now, as this has been taking place, we have the BLM Plaza where Trump supporters are being either ran out by BLM Antifa members or they're being escorted out by the police. So you explain to me now how in the world you can have these millions and millions of people coming out in all of these various places to support Trump all day long with no violence or anything, and then Antifa show up and anti-Trump demonstrators allegedly hurled eggs at Trump supporters, stole their signs, hats, and banners, and lit them on fire. Explain this to me. Let's see. Here's a little video. Let's see if we can... Okay, it's just a mob of Antifa, BLM that are attacking elderly Trump supporters. Man, they're they're something else. Amazing. These people look to be about 65, 70 years old. Looks like a man and a wife standing there with their Trump flags, and then you've got all these gutless teenagers in abundance. Let's see. Here's another vid. Let's see what this says.
Didn't find out. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
Sorry about the language. That was right off the cuff. Yeah, Trump supporters. It's Antifa running up behind Trump supporters and beating them in the head with stuff. Multiple Trump supporters assaulted by pro-BLM supporters in Washington, D.C. One of the supporters assaulted was brutally knocked out. So there's chaos now that's erupting in Washington, D.C. over this. And you know good and well the Democrat mayor of D.C. is going to allow this to happen. And all you're going to hear on the news is how violent the Trump supporters got last night. So you heard it first here that it is Antifa and BLM that is causing the violence now. So this is where we are, folks. Now, let's step back and take a bird's eye view. What is the need to become violent if you're winning? I know that question has been asked by many people, but if you've won the election and you know that you have won, what is the need for Antifa and BLM to get out and be violent? Unless their handlers are telling them, you go out and you start hurting people. There would be no need in them doing that if they were going to win this as a whole. So there's just more proof that they're not going to win this, and they know it, and they're starting their purge. They're starting their rage. So could the deep state know that here pretty soon the election is going to be called and it's going to be given to Trump? Or is all of this going to have to play out in the courts and then go to the Supreme Court? Now, okay, last week we reported that if there is no president, then it goes to the House, and then the House votes on the president, and we know that there is a majority of Democrats in the House, so they would give it to Biden. I also reported that Pelosi, if there is no president selected by the 20th, then Pelosi would take over his presidency until there is a president decided, and I was wrong. That was wrong. So I apologize for that. What will happen constitutionally here is that if there is no president selected by that time, it would go to the House for a vote for president. But the way it would work is not the entire House chooses the president. What happens is they choose one representative from each state. So there's going to be 50 House members that will be the ones deciding who is president. Not the entire House, just one person from each state. 50 people would convene together and cast their vote for president. And Republicans cover 37 to 38 states. So we have the majority. If it comes down to that, then the Republicans have the majority in that 50 panel vote. So it looks like even if the courts don't settle it by the 20th, and it does go to the House constitutionally, Trump's still going to get it if it comes to that vote. So there is still hope, folks. And, you know, with all this evidence that they've got, I don't know how it's going to play out. It is going to go to Trump, period. I mean, it's got to. I mean, if it does not, and somehow or another Biden does get the presidency, then we've all been being played. But with the moves that Trump is making by firing all of these individuals, putting a wall up around the White House, knowing that now let me just run this up your flagpole, see if you salute. They put an unscalable wall around the White House. So if Trump has fired the head of the Secretary of Defense there, then that means the guy, Christopher, that he's put in there, who is a hard-hitting, pipe-wheeling dude that's on Trump's side, they're not going to send the military in to get Trump. So what would be the need for that wall? If Biden wins, what would be the need for the wall? Well, you may say, well, because the Antifa brats would try to go in and get Trump. They won't, man. They even remotely get close to the White House, man. The Secret Service and the snipers would put one in the head, two in the chest. It'd be a bloodbath. So, obviously, the wall is up there to protect the White House from a rage from Antifa and all of them, knowing that Trump is going to get it. So there's just, if we step back and look, there's just so much proof that this is going to go to Trump. We are just in the transition to where it's just being shown to us. It is the Great Awakening. It is the Great Awakening. So as we have read or opened the show here with Jeremiah, we can see that the Lord moves mighty. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and I will show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not. For thus saith the Lord of God of Israel concerning the house of the city and concerning the houses of the kings of Judah, which are thrown down by the mounds and by the sword. They come to fight with the Chaldeans, but it is to fill them with dead bodies of men whom I have slain in my anger and in my fury, for all whose wickedness I have hid my face from this city. So, folks, if God is in this, He is going to show us great and mighty things that we know not. And for all of those who come against what God has ordained, He's just told us here, there's going to be consequences. But it is to fill them with the dead bodies of men whom I have slain in my anger and in my fury. I really think God has had enough. I think that the stench of the iniquity and the abominations have reached the nostrils of God. Oh, thank you, Sister Elizabeth. I was going to cover that and forgot all about it now. She shot me a message and said she heard that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have the votes to remain the Speaker of the House. And I've actually got a clip for that. Here we go.
But only know in January, because to become Speaker, you have to have 218 votes on the floor. When she went up for that vote 2 years ago, there were 15 Democrats who voted against her. 10 of those Democrats will be coming to Congress. If those 10 vote against her again, she will not be Speaker of the House because she won't have 218 because of the gains of the Republicans. We are close enough now that we can control the floor with a few Democrats joining with us. Remember what America just said. They rejected this socialism. We won from Miami to New York to Minnesota to California. We won by Republican women winning. We'll have more women in Congress as Republicans than in the history of Congress.
So it looks like old Pelosi, she's not going to get the She's not going to get the Speaker of the House role. And now keep in mind, senators and House representatives, they're being overturned in this election too. I know Georgia, they've got a race between senators Congress people down there. But it's looking like we're gaining in the Senate and in the House. So folks, don't give up. God has got this. Hey, regardless of what God decides here, folks, He is in charge. And not one sparrow falls to the ground outside of the will of the Father. We got to hear this one more time before we close.
Sydney, at the outset of this broadcast, I said that this is the culmination of what has been over a 4-year effort to overthrow this president, to first deny his candidacy, the election, but then to overthrow his presidency. This looks like the effort to carry out an end game in the effort against him. Do you concur?
Oh, absolutely. And it's been organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, the big tech companies, the social media companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to release the Kraken.
Now, keep in mind, folks, that this is Sidney Powell, man. This is the woman who has gone up against the deep state in General Flynn's case and got the case, dropped because there was no evidence. They're hiding things. Now, I know Judge Sullivan is still trying to keep his thing alive, but Sidney Powell is like Rudy Giuliani. She is not playing games here, and she, like Giuliani, is a hard-hitting, pipe-wheeling gal. So we need to be in prayer for our nation, prayer for Trump, be in prayer for Sidney Powell, be in prayer for each other, be in prayer for the Patriots up in Washington, D.C. right now, folks. The devil is loose. Dominion, the devil wants to take dominion over the earth, and it is the Dominion software that has been accomplishing it. So I believe that the hand of God is in this. Repent, give your life back to Jesus Christ. Call down the thunder. We have the authority over this. The church has been given the rod of iron to rule all nations over. So we've been given the authority to trample over scorpions and serpents. We don't have to put up with this. Do not comply with COVID laws. Stand up and be an American. Grow a pair, and we'll catch you next weekend. Bye-bye.
Smokehouse.
To talk with Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. Then dial the access code 252-380, followed by the pound sign, and you will be placed in the queue.
Call in and join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.